Welcome back. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate Raila Odinga and the Kenya Kwanza flag bearer William Ruto are the frontrunners in the August 9th contest to determine the country's fifth president. However, pundits have intimated that a huge chunk of that battle would be between Ruto and his boss, President Uhuru Kenyatta. In recent days, the simmering tensions between the former political friends turned foes, seemingly, has exploded into a fully blown war of words, with the two top leaders openly engaging in a spate of political attacks. President Kenyatta, who is finishing his second term in office, has been using public forums to hit out at his estranged deputy. And the gloves seem to be coming off. Ruto was previously cautious while responding to his boss, seemingly emboldened, and is now hitting back hard. Tonight here on Front and Center, we take a deep dive into the frosty relations between Uhuru and Ruto, which the National Cohesion and Integration Commission, NCIC, is looking into to ascertain whether it is heightening political tensions ahead of the general election in the next 32 days. Let's now begin where this started earlier this week, the president addressing indirectly his deputy. Let's listen in.
Na ndio mimi nasikitika hapo nikiona wengine ngwe mtu amekuwa huko amepewa kazi, badala ya kazi ni mdomo. Alafu sasa mimi tutafanya na kwa nini hukufanya wakati ulikuwa huko eh? Hii mambo ya makelele kila saa, kichwa yako ni makelele huko. Watu wawache upuzi. Huyu Munya miaka 3 amekuja amebadilisha mambo huko katika agriculture, amebadilisha. Hawa walikuwa huko miaka 8, walifanya nini? Kituambia watu hawajui vile wanasema. Hawa ndio hawaelewi.
That was President Uhuru Kenyatta over the weekend, and a few hours later, an audio file was seemingly leaked of the Deputy President, William Ruto, in a meeting, we understand, with a group of elders, saying that he almost slapped the President following the cancellation of the presidential election results in 2017. Let's listen to that audio.
Baada ya 2017, mimi nataka niwaambie, najua tulienda kufanya uchaguzi, tukashinda. Huyu mtu akaenda pale, akakoroga, ikasemekana turudie uchaguzi. Si ndio? Watu wengi, sijui ni kwa sababu gani, watu wengi walikuwa nafikiri sasa ikisemekana turudie uchaguzi, ati tutawachana na Uhuru. Sijui kwa sababu gani watu walikuwa naamini hivyo. Lakini mimi nilitoka hapa kwa ofisi na nilikuwa nimemwambia Uhuru, hii chunga hapo iko Kiingereza. Akaniambia hapana, nimechunga kabisa, kila kitu iko sawa. Kulikuwa na mtu mwingine anaitwa Nje, sijui nani.
All right, so in a continuation of that clip, the Deputy President says he was not going to let the President quit that easily, saying that it's just that he respects the President. He almost slapped him, to saying that he was not going to let that go. And in studio tonight, I'm joined by a panel of Dismas Mokua, political risk analyst, also Dr. Alutalala Mukwana, a political strategist and lawyer. Also with me tonight is governance expert Sylvester Kasuku, and lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me tonight. It is an important part of the electionary period. 32 days to go to the August 9th polls. The clergy, to be specific, has been speaking about the tensions between the two top leaders and what that means in this country in the political campaign, whether it's heightening the political temperatures in this country. And NCIC is looking to it, we understand. Dr. if I can begin with you, where did this start? And did you ever think it could get to the levels it has, less than 35 days to the election?
Thank you, Ben, for having me. I think this, for me, is not to be unexpected, because the truth of the matter is that since the handshake arrived in the country, there have been a lot of happenings which have been concealed from the public eye. It is now clear that Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta has descended into the arena of campaigning for Honorable Raila Odinga. Right. For quite a prolonged period, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta had not publicly gone out there to pronounce himself as campaigning for Honorable Raila Odinga. It came in piecemeal and gradually. These spats are about from around February, April this year, where the president has gone ahead and said openly and clearly that his deputy is not a good man, in very few words, and clearly saying that he ought to wait for another time, but this time is Honorable Raila Odinga's time. Now, knowing the deputy president's mien, it was just a matter of time before he removed the gloves and went hammer and tongs for His Excellency the President. Right. Because nothing, and I repeat, nothing in my view, will stop Honorable William Ruto from going what he really wants to go for. Right. That is his character.
Sylvester, many pundits have said that the president should have let the succession battle take place without his involvement, that he should not be involved in his own succession. What do you say to that?
I think that that is a kind of a restrictive imagination. First and foremost, the government of the UhuRuto is still in force. And even if the KK group were to unveil a much progressive manifesto than what the UhuRuto had, it wouldn't be that the current government has not done much, because the leader of the KK, or that is Deputy President William Ruto, right, himself is the Deputy President in the current regime. And they are going to complete a whole 10 years, of which, if he is now saying that what has been happening in the government has actually hurt the people, then it's directly in the middle of that particular
You do
base.
not think
so
that anything changed in the
what I think the president is doing is actually saying, why are you blaming me when you yourself, you are responsible? So how can you be a solution to a problem you've created? How can you promise the people that you are the freedom provider, that freedom is coming? Now you are the one leading the freedom is coming brigade. And yet you are the one actually in power. So I think that is what is making the president come out. It is not like the president is trying to now fight his deputy president, but I think he's making matters clearer.
All right. But actually, there are so many balls in the air. There was a certain promise that was made, kumi yako, kumi yangu. There was the first 5 years in office. Then there was a second 5-year term. There was the handshake. A lot has happened. What do you make of this point in that UhuRuto duo, if you may call it that?
Thank you, Ben. You know, they say the only constant in politics is interest. The rest are variables. And I think when time came to now Uhuru Kenyatta proving the kumi yangu, kumi yake, the interest had changed. So I will categorize the difference between William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta into two. One, it is...
All right. Bwana Wakili, let me just interrupt you a bit. We need to sort your audio just in a second. So I'll just hold that thought as we sort that the microphone issue. Let me come to you, Dismas. Thank you for joining us on the show here. What do you make of this? Who is to blame, if I may ask that, between the two top leaders in this country?
Well, thanks for the opportunity to be on this show. Number one, for any state to grow, you need defense and security stability. You need political stability and economic stability. And in any country, in any state, the buck stops with the president of the republic or with the prime minister or whoever is running the show. So what you are seeing in Kenya is a leadership crisis. And in the US, they say the buck stops with the president. So if there's anything going on wrong in Kenya, it's with the president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. That is where the buck stops. Now, when you look at the role of the Deputy President, William Samoei Ruto, his role is not very critical, and it's informed by the goodwill of the president. When you look at the 47 governors and their deputies, and the deputy president as well, the signature of the deputy president of the Republic of Kenya and that of all the deputy governors carries no weight at all. They are no more than glorified advisors to the governors or to the president. So if there's anything going wrong in Kenya, the buck stops with President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Now, assuming that the deputy president has done a mistake, the president is required to play in the superior league. Because again, as the head of state, is supposed to be the symbol of national unity. If anybody within the administration has engaged in any mistakes, he has got the moral responsibility to point it out. And President Mwai Kibaki set the gold standard when he did not play an active role in succession politics. And you know, in Africa, succession politics tend to be very dicey. So the best thing for President Kenyatta is actually to take a back seat and let Mr. William Samoei Ruto and Mr. Raila Odinga fight it out. Right. But anything else outside that, it's going to degenerate. However, on the flip side...
There are those who say that even the late President Mwai Kibaki had a little bit of a hand in his... He tried to, but it was subtle. Don't you think?
That is supposed to be the best practice.
Right.
It's supposed to be very subtle, but you don't go to the top of Mount Kenya and make your intentions known. You do it from the back seat, and you allow Mura, Nafula, and Wanjiko to take a decision. But you know, right now, what President Kenyatta has done is trying to influence the decision. But again, now we go back to the decent chap theory, which assumes that our leaders are going to behave in a certain manner, that they're going to treat Kenyans with respect. The altercation between President Kenyatta and his deputy confirms that these two leaders have no respect for each other, and also they do not respect citizens. Because if they respected citizens, they would not be washing their dirty linen in public.
All right. Daktari, would there be a way of the two leaders differing in a manner that is not the way it is right now, in an issue-based? Because a lot of people have been saying this election is different. It is more issue-based. It is about the economy. But the two top leaders, again, taking back to the kind of war of words, kind of politics that we are seeing. Could this have been done better?
Thank you. I wish Wakili had come before me, but because he was adopting a certain train of argument that I would have liked to respond to. But let me say something here, Ben. Promises must stand for something in this country. I agree with what Wakili is saying, attempted to say that the only constants are interest, the rest are variables, they're shifting. But if promises must mean something in this country, then Dr. William Samoei Ruto must be given and must be forgiven for trying to hold, though not very directly, trying to hold His Excellency the President to his promise. Because the battle that William Ruto fought for and on behalf of Uhuru Kenyatta in 2013 and 2017 was no mean battle. And it is in the public domain that he was promised, that my brother here has said, yake tano, yake kumi, yangu kumi. So if promises mean anything, and indeed manifestos that are being launched now are promises. So if our leaders have to tell us something that you have to believe, then I sympathize and I empathize with Honorable William Ruto to insist in a subtle way that promises must mean something. However, for as long as Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta is openly, and his imagery is wonderful, that he stands on Mount Kenya and announces that the president we shall campaign for is this one and not this one. There is no other way that these differences and these pugilists will do it in the background, because the ultimate target are the people who have to vote for either William Ruto or Raila Odinga. And therefore these fights and these campaigns will be in the open. And that is why it is yet to get murky, Ben. The position that Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta has taken is such that a lot of his reputation and a lot of his past will be dragged in the open. And in my view, rightfully so. Because maji ukiyavulia kakangu, hunabudi kuyaoga.
Ushasema. Right, let's take a quick commercial break here on Front and Center very quickly. We're back. I'm in studio with Dr. Alutalala Mukwana, lawyer and political strategist, political risk analyst Dismas Mokua, governance expert Sylvester Kasuku, and lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. We're trying to sort your audio, Kipchumba. We shall be doing that very shortly. We are talking about trying to demystify the frosty relations between the top two leaders, President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, and what this means for this country. In this time, the country is preparing for its biggest election yet. Stay with us. Back to the broadcast. This is Front and Center. I'm Ben Kitili. It is 32 days, barely 32 days to the August 9th general election. And Kenyans will be deciding, among other things, who the fifth president will be. And we have seen a war of words between President Uhuru Kenyatta and Deputy President William Ruto, who is a presidential candidate in this election on a UDA ticket. Pundits and clergy saying this has an effect on the political temperature in this country and on that race to State House. Kipchumba Karuri, what is your initial point on where this began and why we are where we are as a country when it comes to these two top leaders?
I think to just give the nation a background kind of thinking, Ben, first of all, morally, it is wrong for Uhuru Kenyatta to try and engage in active political whatever it takes, it means in the current scenario. But legally, he has the right. He is a voter. He is a Kenyan to engage in that. But morally, that is where we are in this quagmire. So anybody trying to investigate, they're investigating the wrong person. They should just investigate the people who are saying all manner of things. But back to the discussion, Ben. Look at it this way, Ben. These two gentlemen are politicians who have had their own political history for a while. And as I was saying before the mic and Kasuku dealt with me, this is the problem is here. The two gentlemen, first of all, you will say it is somehow ideological because as Uhuru Kenyatta's term was coming to an end and after he got the second term, he had an handshake and it moved to BBI, it moved to a referendum, it moved to a political party. What was he trying to do there? He wanted to perpetuate himself, just like any other African leader who will want to leave but to remain in power through the back door. That is why he realized that this can't happen with the deputy president or William Ruto, the person he knows, because he wants a marionette for a presidential candidate who he can push around. And we have been told even why they settled on Raila Odinga. He has a problem with health, his age, and other things. We know those buttocks that are pelted around. But at the end of the day, nobody, and it is one of the things that Kenyans will speculate for long about why the two disagreed. But if I was to add my voice as a Kenyan, because Uhuru Kenyatta, I voted for him. Uhuru Kenyatta is my president. When he goes to national event and starts saying nye nye nye, I don't know if it's presidential. And then again, I am confused. Is that an Azimio tantrum because he's the Azimio chairman, or that's a presidential tantrum? You know, now that is where Kenyans are lost. Because when a president goes down below the normal political loan bills which we have in both sides, I hope you understand. Each side has political people who keep gibbering here and there. But the main point we need to ask ourselves, going to the future, Kasuku, relax. Going to the future is what Uhuru Kenyatta doing currently? Is he serving his legacy? Is he helping Kenyans? And if whatever he's been saying on TV, it means then he was an incompetent president. For this sense, Ben, if I say, wewe hukufanya hii, you are the head of state. Everything stopped with you. There was no other power beyond Uhuru Kenyatta. Or there is no other power. So when he comes out and tries to use William Ruto as a dustbin, that is when we ask, did we have the right decision as Kenyans in electing Uhuru Kenyatta as a president?
All right. I think we need to
let me let Kasuku weigh in on this.
Karuri knows very well that this is a very important show, discussing matters of this country at a very important juncture. Now, the issue of the president coming out to speak is not just something that has happened today. And we cannot say that the statements or the words used by the president are so gross that they've never ever been found anywhere in our country. Even President Kibaki used to say something about chicken things and, bure kabisa, some things like that. It did not make him non-presidential. But what I want to say is that a lot of things have been happening or have been simmering beneath the surface. And we can refer to many media reports in the past, even all the way back to the first term, that the deputy president used to hold the president at ransom, even on appointments, even whenever even the president maybe wanted to make certain appointments and make announcements, he would say no. Maybe if his interests were not catered for, Maybe that's why Karori was saying that this is a game of interest. If he felt that the president wanted to appoint somebody he did not want, then he would even refuse to attend the meeting. Or if his list was not fully catered for, then he would not attend the meeting. So what I wanted to say is that maybe the friction started all the way from the first term when they formed government. And we also saw a situation in which the deputy president, being deputy president on one side, and on the other side, starting to play a victim of his own government and crying wolf, and then, you know, seeking for sympathy that I'm now being beaten. And yet he is the one who also shares with the president, the intelligence report, among many other things, and actually is in control.
All right.
When he wants to convince the country that he's in control, he does it. When he finds it fit to say that he's actually a victim of the state, then he jumps on the other side and starts to look like he's not even a deputy president.
All right.
But just Ben,
yes.
just before my good professor comes in, there is something that Kasuku must understand. The moment or the day Uhuru Kenyatta stood in KICC and took over the chairmanship of Azimio, it meant that you'll be treated as part of the competition. So that is what is happening.
All right.
Going forward, we
yes.
will not be sure what he's saying. He says as a president or the Azimio chairman. So that's why when people are dealing with Uhuru Kenyatta from that day
he
going
has made
forward,
his bed. That's what you're
yes.
saying.
Then
All
I think this is
Dr.
going to be a package. The same way the deputy president is deputy president. So therefore, do we deal with him as a deputy president, or do we deal with him?
Well, he's a presidential candidate. He's a presidential candidate in this election.
Ben, I think my advice is, let me weigh in a bit from the purely constitutional point of view. And on the side, maybe each time one of the gentlemen has contributed, you must invite either my brother here or myself, because it seems to be a spat between the two. It is not KK versus Azimio here. Yes. We really want to enrich the discussion, not that it isn't enriching. Under Article 131, I think it's Article E of the Constitution, the president's office is described in very clear terms that the presidency is a symbol of national unity. Now, going by that requirement of the Constitution, maybe we need then to start asking ourselves, by virtue of that provision of the Constitution, was it in order for the president, who is supposed at all times while his term lasts to represent national unity, by descending into the arena of competitive politics and making a public endorsement of one competitor against the other, does that abrogate his role as a symbol of national unity? Number two, for as long as he is still in office, does his obvious choice of one candidate as opposed to the other, does it espouse national unity or national division? You see, if we argue from that constitutional standpoint, then you realize that the son of Jomo has actually invited a bit of trouble to himself. Because when he stands up in a political rally and pronounces his disposition towards one candidate, what is the other side supposed to think? And what are the other millions of supporters on the other side supposed to think? So clearly, Mheshimiwa Uhuru's choice of presidential country, of how elections have been conducted in this country. And when we remind ourselves that elections in this country are based on tribal blocks, and then when we go further down and identify Honorable William's tribal block, and Honorable Kenyatta's tribal block, and Honorable Raila Odinga's tribal block, that can send shivers down our spine when we think of how best that division caused by the presidential intervention will go.
All right. Dismas, what's your thought on this?
I'd like to agree with part of what Professor has indicated, that these three powerful politicians, if their interests are not aligned with our national and public interests, they're going to be a source of political instability. And nobody needs political instability in Kenya. And this gets further complicated because majority of the Kenyan voters, as you have said times above number, they're emotional and they're irrational. So whatever these three powerful politicians say is as good as law. When they tell them to jump, they don't ask why, they ask how high. Now, with that kind of a scenario, they must be guarded with whatever they are saying because they're very powerful. I would even venture to say that the three are populist politicians because they've gift of the gab, they are flamboyant, all of them are insiders, but play as if they're outsiders.
All right.
And they've got high capacity, they've got a lot of resources. which is why they must be very careful. I mean, my cousin in the village in Mosocho can go to the mountain and say whatever he says, nobody will bother.
Indeed.
But when President Kenyatta says, ngwe, then people sit back and ask themselves, wait a minute, is that the President of the Republic of Kenya? And it is even more complicated that he's about to leave office and he's supposed to assume international roles, international agendas. He's supposed to go and start having tea with people like Ibrahim Babangida or Thabo Mbeki. Now, Thabo Mbeki and Babangida would sit back and ask themselves, wait a minute, what is President Kenyatta saying in Kenya? Having said that, we must also point out what Kipchumba Karoide has said, that why the choice of Raila Odinga? And in my view, it's unacceptable to start casting aspersions on his health or on his age, because Raila Odinga is a very strong man. And I doubt, while it could be a project, it could be President Kenyatta's project, I doubt whether it's going to be a puppet or a marionette. Because if he becomes the president, the moment he takes oath of office at Kasarani, and lawyers say before 2 o'clock, he will... I mean, he would shock everybody, because, you know, people at some stage suspected that President Mwai Kibaki is a gentleman you are going to play around with. But as soon as he took office, people said, wait a minute, is this the same man we are looking at?
All right.
Also, the same happened with President Moi. They said this is a passing cloud, but the cloud was static for 24 years. Now, even people who are thinking that Raila Odinga would be manipulated, they may get a shock of their life.
All right. Kipchumba, before I come to you, for you to tell me about whether the former Prime Minister is, or the aim is to make him a puppet president. Kipchumba, in 2016, when more than 10 parties collapsed to form the Jubilee Party, the idea by the Deputy President and his boss, the President, was to have national unity, to boost national unity and to change the politics of this country. Many say that what's happening right now has left an indelible mark on blemish on both the two gentlemen's legacy.
I think, Ben,
agree?
There is something amphoteric about Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto. There is what we call the convergence of divergent ideological standpoints in this sense. Whereas Uhuru Kenyatta, Uhuru Kenyatta is the first president to rule this country under the Constitution 2010. And that Constitution has put sufficient safeguards in the office of the Deputy President and in the office of the Deputy Governor, so that the late Otieno Kajwang will say, you can easily divorce your wife at home, but you cannot divorce your deputy. That is now the convergence. But the point that we pity the Republic tonight is that we have political parties that might be large in following, but they are not infrastructurally large in terms of ideological cornerstone that builds the party. This is to say that whereas what Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto underwent between 2018 and 2020, ask yourself, if it was in ANC in South Africa, will it have happened? The answer is no, because that party has structures. Will it have happened in ZANU-PF under Mugabe? The answer are not under the party, whatever they call it, the Politburo. The answer is no. Even when Mugabe became a political liability to ZANU-PF, he was called to order. Look at what was happening in our neighbor Chama Cha Mapinduzi, CCM. Everybody knows that there is no individual bigger than the party. So what they have done, what the two have done in the end,
you can compare this political party system to the likes of South
we can't
Africa
compare for this thing, Ben, which I have always said it. Ours is politics based on what we call ethno-majoritarianism. You bring your tribe and mine, do they have the numbers? We form a party. But the danger is this, Ben, which both William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta have put us in, is that nobody will ever believe in strong political parties, because people will always ask themselves, we went to Jubilee, what did we get?
Okay.
We went to Jubilee and it was just an idea that it had taken, NASA organized themselves as a coalition and Jubilee was a party. If we had built on that, Ben, this country would have been very far. But what we must also appreciate as a legacy of that Jubilee, it brought politics of ideas. What William Ruto now has taken it to the next level, has taken it to those economic forums. It began there. So you have to give it to that. But there is an indelible mark they left. I agree with you.
All right. Sylvester, just before I come to Daktari, very quickly, what would you say is the end game or the purported endgame of the president supporting Raila Odinga for the presidency as he's exiting?
First of all, you wanted to ask me a question of whether the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga
It's the same question.
is a project or not. I think, considering that we are all Kenyans and we've been around, we do know the leader Raila Amolo Odinga. He's never been a project of anyone. He's been a champion of reforms. He's been a champion of good governance. He's been a champion of the rights of the people. He's been a champion of working for the people of Kenya. What I want to say is that he has been the Prime Minister.
All right.
He did it right. Now, going forward, where it must come up at the right time to say that how he's bringing economic revolution, not because he's a project, but he has actually seen it that he requires
So Sylvester,
to
there
change
are
society.
those who say Raila, the reform, his long career in politics. There are those who say that he has sacrificed that at the altar of, sitting on that house on the hill, and that he has now left what he believes in and has aligned himself with the people he has always beaten for not doing enough, don't you think?
That is so off from the, from the platform. I would like to say that if you want to look even at the manifestos, why is his manifesto so strong? Why was it launched much earlier than the other team launched theirs a month later?
Okay.
Why is
So
it
the credentials are still there, you say?
the credentials are strong?
But Ben,
I want to take a quick break.
Just a minute. What I want to say is that this election is actually clearly bringing to the fore that the competitors are actually forming in the formation of a trooping of colors. The like terms are coming together. The reformists are on one side. Those who have never believed in reforms, those who have been...
but Ben, there's something you must debunk in your show, Ben. Just a second before my senior
Let me get Daktari, because we have to go for a break, then come back. Daktari,
Ben,
40 seconds
there
only.
is I was going to talk on a promise before my brother, probably. Let me talk about the promise. The promise is important.
Okay.
Because the manifesto, in simple terms, is a promise of what the candidate proposes to do for his people when he's elected.
Right.
Something great is happening in Britain today. And Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister of Britain, until today, has been taken to task for what it is that he promised for his office. And I think today he went home.
Yes, he has resigned.
This careless talk about politics being only important because your interests converge must stop. Correct. He has said something very fundamental. Ethno-majoritarian rule. Indeed, that is where the greatest legacy that Honorable William Ruto, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, and even Honorable Raila Odinga will leave for this country. The reason why NASA broke was because promises were not kept. The reason why Jubilee broke was because promises were not kept. The reason why this country will break is because our politicians have no regard for promises. In brief, they lie openly and feel nothing when they go to the office. That is the saddest bit of our politicians.
All right. I have a question for you when you come back. Is that what they call political conmanship? And is that is after the break? I want you to hold...
That is the toxic politics. But we have to go to the break because Sylvester here has assaulted logic. Because he has said that because Raila Odinga is the champion of democracy, his fingerprints are on the 2010 constitution, he's always run as an establishment candidate, therefore, it cannot be a project. That is assaulting logic.
Right.
Number two, that Azimio la Umoja launched the manifesto before Kenya Kwanza. Again, that counts for nothing.
Please hold that thought for now. Let's take a quick commercial break.
actually, I wanted to remember that.
We're coming back to that. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Front and Center. We're talking about the frosty relations between the President, the head of state, Uhuru Kenyatta, and his deputy, William Ruto, who is a presidential candidate in this election. What this means for this election. Stay with us. Welcome back to the broadcast. This is Front and Center. I'm in studio with Kipchumba Karori, lawyer and political strategist, governance expert Sylvester Kasuku, lawyer and political strategist, Dr. Alutalala Muhwana, and political risk analyst Dismas Mokua. Dismas, I was on you before we went for a commercial break. State capture. Those two words have been used a lot over the last 5 years, but also more so over the last 2 weeks since Kenya Kwanza launched their manifesto. And it is in their manifesto, and that is what they've been saying. Azimio have been accusing them of not factoring in the fight against theft of public funds in their manifesto. They say it is what that state, dealing with state capture means. A lot of people have deduced this to mean that they will, if Ruto was to win the presidency, would go after, his current boss, and that is what's making these waters even murkier. Do you agree with this?
Now, to be fair, all the presidential candidates and even others who've been stopped by IBC from running have actually described state capture. Maybe they did not use the same words, state capture, because simply state capture is political corruption where public officers, especially the elected public officers, do not serve our national or public interest. Right. They use their position as a factor of production so that their personal interests overweigh or given precedence. Jim Wanjigi spoke about it, Raila Odinga has spoken about it, but Kenya Kwanza has captured it and placed it on the manifesto. Now, what is interesting is, when you go through that Kenya Kwanza manifesto into detail, as I have, they have not mentioned a name. But people have already started crying, saying that we are being targeted. So one begins to wonder, if your name has not been mentioned, why are you feeling nervous? Why are you guilty all of a sudden? And in my view, if Kenya Kwanza retains the presidency and they start auditing these major public decisions and institutions, that would be a good thing for Kenya. Because President Kenyatta is on record as having said that corruption is actually domiciled at his office. He said that. Right. And then at some stage he said that we lose 2 billion shillings every day, which translates to a massive 720 billion per annum. Now, that is a part of state capture. Now, the president is on record issuing directives times above number, that I want tenders publicized, I want this to be done, but people do not act on those directives. So in my view, anybody who becomes a president, whether it's going to be Professor Wajakoya, whether it's going to be Ruto, whether it's going to be Raila, we must audit decisions taken in Kenya from 1963. Right. It should even capture the Ndegwa Commission, because why do you allow public servants of rank to do business with themselves? I mean, you sit at the office of the president or at the National Treasury, and then you are the principal supplier to the same government you're working in. That is how they've stifled the private sector in Kenya. Because for you to do any meaningful business with the government, you must be in government. And members of the National Assembly have indicated times above number that corruption is domiciled at the national government as well as the National Assembly. That our legislators, when they go to the bathroom and they receive khaki envelopes, they budget for corruption. We need to question all these decisions. All right. For instance, at some stage, we were using timber for poles, for power supply. Then all of a sudden, without public participation, we went to concrete poles. One may want to ask one question: why did this happen? Even removing subsidies on fertilizer, we want to start asking these questions. You know, all the bilateral, all the multilateral agreements signed in, we must ask ourselves, do they serve our national interest and do they serve our public interest?
Indeed, we can have a whole show on this issue of state capture. Daktari, if I can come to you, do you think the Kenya Kwanza Brigade have a right to promise what they are promising, to tell Kenyans or their supporters they will go after people they accuse of state capture? And do you think the president has a right to feel targeted and to react in the way he has?
Thank you. I think he has handled it well. I'll just add that Ben, if an incoming president were to go for his predecessor, that would have happened when Mzee Moi retired. Because so much was talked about Mzee Moi and how he had not done things right. I recall Mheshimiwa Kiraitu Murungi telling him, for example, in one of the rallies, that let him go home and herd the goats as we show him how to run government. A few years later, after they have been in government, the Moi prophecy that wanasema Moi must go, one time will come, they'll say Moi must come back. Actually, that was a fulfilling prophecy. The reason is this, that in politics, and in Kenya in particular, all these leading lights in politics coalesce around certain specific benefits which are covert, and none of us will never know what deals they have made. And by the time you see these ethnic blocks coming to work together, a lot of protective clauses have already been sealed away from the public glare. And therefore, whether the SGR was procured corruptly, whether COVID billionaires swindled the country, nothing will be done about it except tusahau iliyopita, tujenge taifa. Mzee Kenyatta left that mantra with us. Number two, it is not feasible to think that because Kenya Kwanza have not specifically talked about corruption. In my view, I have read the manifesto, and they have outlined various aspects of how they intend to tackle the economy. And you can see part of the solutions there eventually will lead to the reduction, if not eradication, of corruption. And there is no reason why the sitting president should feel threatened that William Ruto will go after him. The only reason that he may have anxiety, but I've told you there is no need for anxiety because they'll always cover for each other. The only reason why his supporters may feel vulnerable is by sheer fact that they have descended into the arena of campaigning and they are campaigning for William Ruto's competitor. And therefore, in the end, they'll not have plum jobs as a continuation as it will be if Honorable Raila Odinga will take the seat. Right. Because if Honorable Raila Odinga takes, then Uhuru Kenyatta has his people in continuity. After all, is he not the chairman of the Azimio Council?
All right. It's a delicate balance, Sylvester. What is your...
Before
I come to
first and foremost, this issue of state capture is not something that is new here in Kenya. And it's not even the only isolated case in the whole world. I believe that the Kenya Kwanza Brigade has copied this from what President Zuma,
I hope you're not justifying it, though.
No, I'm not justifying. What I'm saying is that President Zuma in 2018 established what was called the Zondo Commission. And in that Zondo Commission, it was meant to investigate state capture.
The Guptas.
The Guptas. Now, at the end of the day, who went to jail? Zuma. Now, in the words of two World Bank researchers, that is Joel Hellman and Daniel Kaufman, they say that state capture is a state of grand corruption, that oligarchs manipulating policy formulation and even shaping the emerging rules of the game. He did talk about like when changes were made with regard to what type of poles were to be used in electricity transmission lines. Who made that change? In whose interest? Who therefore benefited from it? Kenyans are the best judges. Going forward, we are saying that state capture cannot just be confined, let's say, or to be defined in the frame of the KK manifesto, and that Uhuru Kenyatta is now the one who will suffer as a result of establishment of a commission of state capture. What I want to say is that that is a mere campaign statement. And because there have been many other campaign statements associated with the same brigade from 2013, 2017, including free bundles and free internet for youths to get jobs, and the same being repeated now, laptops, and then going to diapers, coming from, 10,000 MSMEs and coming into wheelbarrows. I want to say that we better stop this kind of shenanigans of bringing or just tabling mere statements to woo voters, to create fear, and to pretend to be the key champion of good governance in Kenya.
Thank you, Sylvester.
And yet we are leaving the credible ones who are known to be, for that particular perspective, look like they are waiting.
Wanawakili, what is your take on this? And what is the impact of those two words in that Kenya Kwanza manifesto on the campaign trail right now?
They say, Ben, when people talk about old bones, it is women who do what? It's old women who do what? There is a saying, I cannot capture it well.
The guilty are always running.
Yes. So, and the guilty are always running. From where I sit, there is a problem in this country, Ben. And yes, I support, even if it is Wajakoya bringing a state capture commission, if he wins presidency, I will give him 100% support for a simple reason, Ben. And I want us to go. Just give me 2 minutes to demonstrate something. To date, the law, as my professor has enumerated, says all tender documents must be made public. Who knows where the tender document for SGR is? All tender documents for this expressway or whatever, the PPP, where is that document? We have now been told there are some shady companies that are registered in Dubai, that the company, the shareholding is a company that was registered in Cayman Islands. You know what that means. The Pandora Papers told us something. Now they have migrated. They are no longer in those places. They have come to Dubai. That is part of state capture. State capture is this, Ben. When you look at state companies, sugar companies, all of them have collapsed. But all the private companies are still up and running. There is state capture. Yes, that's what I'm saying. When we talk about state capture, don't look at it from a political lens. Look at it from the problem that inflict the normal Kenya. Look here, Ben. If today you are to plant maize in Ukambani, you will not harvest it and sell it. But a politician or somebody will import maize from Malawi and it will get here and it is cheaper than your own maize. Number 3, the issue of how people wanted to take away Kenya Airways. That is state capture. How do you, for example, sell the port of a free country and you border, those things border on sovereignty? Some of these things, Ben, when we go to a state capture commission, some of these loans will have to be revoked because they were not gotten with the intention of helping the sovereigns, but helping the people who are in power. What Dismas Mokua says, you are using your seat as a factor of production. If you did business, you know that factors of production are 3: land, human resource, and something else. So at the end of the day, let me just conclude it this way, Ben.
We need to
let me conclude it this way. If we live in a country where it is only one milkman who sells milk, not even government can control milk, know that we are in a country where there is state capture. Even how the projects in Aror and Kimwarer were handled, there is state capture here, there. So at the end of the day, we must support state capture, not because Uhuru Kenyatta fears it or Oliver Kipchumba fears it, because it is good for this country. At the end of the day, look at even some decisions that come from judiciary. It points, they smell, they work, and they quack like state capture.
But actually, the action is indeed in how to deal with issues of corruption in this country. We have had many other reports before. We've had the Nego report. We've had the land report, Ndungu report, TJRC.
So implementation.
And all implementation have now been done. So anybody telling us about commissions is actually just
it's not about commission. There is something that needs to be dealt with in this country, Ben. Is we need to make sure that the economical decisions of this country are about as many as possible of Kenyans. Look at it this way, Ben. If you import today a TV as a Kenyan, you will pay tax. But if the big boys in Nairobi, listen, let me just finish. If the big boys in Nairobi want to merge their companies, they go to KRA or wherever they will go, they get a tax exemption. If they import maize, how they do it here? When their ships are on the higher seas, they make maize tax exempt here. The ship will come here, the maize will get here, they will not pay tax. That is what we say. We don't want state capture, because there are some people who will access government resources or privileges more than other Kenyans.
We need to bring what we want to say is that therefore those promising state capture, I need to go to promising investigations are actually not even the best to investigate.
So there are so many factors that we have talked about. I wonder if we have gotten to the bottom of why the president and his deputy have been in the sort of troublesome relationship that they have at the end of the second term. As we wind up, I want to start with you for your final thought, Dismas. The clergy on the other day, they were speaking, asking who is going to reconcile the two leaders. Does that need to happen? Is it important at this time of transition? What are your final thoughts?
For some reason, the clergy in Kenya always come after the horse has bolted. I mean, after the fact, they should have done this during the first term. And as one of the panelists has indicated that we started having friction between President Kenyatta and his deputy during the first term, one wonders why he still maintained William Ruto as his running mate and why the clergy did not come at that stage. So for me, some of these religious and church leaders, I find them to be a bit funny and very interesting. And at some stage, they deploy voodoo thinking on these very critical issues. And today, again, you cannot trust a number of these, because a few days ago, you saw the altercation between SUPKEM and NCCK. One body accusing the other that they've endorsed a presidential candidate or a running mate. Now, if you've already taken a position on these critical matters, how can anybody trust you to come and give an independent, objective analysis and then, reconcile these two parties? But at the end of the day, in my view, what we have today in Kenya is a leadership crisis. And if Murad does not sort out the leadership crisis, the other 10 years, we're going to confine ourselves in a we'll find ourselves in a very underwhelming position, and we'll regret. And we have to keep on repeating times above number what you've said in the past, that we should run away from this Stockholm syndrome, where we are fallen in love with our captors, where our tribal leaders come and give us promises. Right. They've got a track record of breaking those promises, but for some reason we think that they are the messiahs, they have come to save us.
Thank you,
so we must do it with our selfish interest in mind.
Dr. Your final thoughts?
NASA should have worked. Jubilee should have worked, for a simple reason, that would have saved us from the tribal-based politics. Because even as these two gentlemen fight over whether commissions will work, the answer still remains no. Because what should work are political parties. And these political parties must be based on ideology, philosophical underpinnings.
Credentials.
As for the church leaders reconciling the two politicians, I do not know why they need them to reconcile. Reconcile over what? I agree with him that they have come in after the fact, Ben, and I miss the days of the late Bishop Alexander Kipsang Muge, Dr. Henry Okulu, Archbishop Ndingi Mwana Nzeki. Those were religious leaders and Cardinal Tunga who stood up and called a bad stuff as a bad stuff. Mm-hmm. The current crop of religious leaders, with tremendous respect except a few, actually actively participate in partisan positioning. And then when the train seems to be hurtling to destruction, they come and say, we want to reconcile. Let these gentlemen square it out.
All right.
We pray to God that we do not have a post-election disturbance, and let the new one start his thing, and we hope things will work.
Thanks, Dr. Sylvester. In 1 minute, your final thoughts.
Definitely, picking the line from the issue of reconciliation, it's not now that we would actually be expecting a reconciliation to occur, but actually President Kenyatta himself led a national prayer at Safari Park to come up with that reconciliation. That was the first platform where I saw the Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila Odinga and the Deputy President William Ruto greet one another. And you also saw some of the clips when the President was asking for forgiveness from Raila Odinga and Raila Odinga doing the same. People who are at the breakfast tables, some of them had very funny expressions on their faces. Because there are people who don't want reconciliation. They thrive on divide and rule. However, going forward, what I want to say is that what brought the problems that we are now trying to seek a reconciliation for is because when the handshake happened, actually the two activities happened within a span of 24 hours. The KK alliance was being formed somewhere in Karen. They met that night and they agreed that they are going to create an alliance which was going to work, which was going to announce itself and sign within 3 months to the election. The following day, the president was greeting Raila Odinga at Harambee House. And these guys felt so slighted. They felt so bad that how can this guy come in with this when we were just planning for succession? So it was because people are having specific and special personal interests in succession rather than the interests of the people of Kenya. So I would like to say that reconciliation or no reconciliation, Kenyans have the right to choose their right leaders whom they know will take care of the resources of this country and make us move forward.
Thank you, Sylvester. Bonawakili, you have the final word today.
I think we need to understand one thing, Ben. Kenya is not a choir where people must sing in harmony. We must know that. Uhuru Kenyatta came from Gatundu or Richaweri knowing that he's joining politics. William Ruto left Sugoi knowing that he's joining politics. So at the end of the day, let us not talk about reconciliation when people have a divergent political ideology. Uhuru Kenyatta is pursuing the ideology you want to maintain status quo and agree and to retain whatever we call state capture and all those enterprise. While at the other hand, Kenyans progressive forces want to go to the future and their main problem being the economy. So where we are, the two cannot agree. Uhuru Kenyatta is pursuing status quo. William Ruto and progressive forces are pursuing an economic freedom. That's why there's this freedom is coming. No, you know,
even a new battery has life. When it is old, it becomes a spent battery. So
There is-
Raila
but
Odinga
we
had good
had
time.
to
we need to wind
At
up.
the end
We
of
had
the
to
day,
respond to the
so
issue of
let me make my final
he
remark.
made a statement that the Right Honorable Raila Odinga
You are not Raila
is
Odinga.
We need
weak
to
or what.
wind
I mean,
up,
we are here
Sylvester.
for all the leaders of
Listen,
Kenya.
listen.
Sylvester,
That's
we
what
need to
we
wind
state
up.
is
No,
that
no, no.
What,
Sylvester, we need to
where
wind up.
we need
Really,
to
we
go
must
from here,
let him make
Ben,
his point.
is number one, we need, as the professor said, we need to strengthen political parties. If we had strong institutions within the political parties,
Yes.
the UhuRuto mess would not have happened. Number two, we need to rid this country, Ben, of politics of deceit and conmanship, where I just stand and say, Kasuku, you will have 10 years, and I walk away as though nothing happened. The third and final point, Ben,
Yes.
as we go and discuss about manifestos being documents of intent, we need in the next dispensation to deposit them with the register of the political parties so that we reduce political conmanship.
All right.
I think that will be moving to the right
Thank you.
direction.
Thank you,
May I
Bonakili.
agree with him?
10
I just want to agree with
10
him.
seconds,
Yes.
strictly.
If you remember the 2007 manifesto, ODM manifesto of Raila Odinga, which ushered in the infrastructure development agenda, you've seen it has worked well. It was not a mere promise,
All right.
but it was indeed a real action that
Your
the
turn-
economy required.
your 10 seconds
Going
are
forward,
done, Sylvester.
we can therefore still continue to
Thank
believe
you.
in those leaders who have
We will-
delivered on their manifesto.
We will continue to keep an eye on this story for you, the frosty relations between the two top leaders and what this means to this particular election campaign. 32 days to the August 9th general election. The campaign is getting to fever pitch. We shall continue to keep an eye on this and what this means for both sides of the political divide, Kenya Kwanza Brigade and the Azimio side. Many thanks to my panelists tonight. I had with me political risk analyst Dismas Mokua, the Duke of Mosocho, they call him. Dr. Alutalala Mukhwana, lawyer and political strategist, governance expert Sylvester Kasuku, and lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. Thank you, gentlemen, for gracing our show tonight. So we leave it here on Front and Center. Be sure to join us every Thursday night from around 9:35 as we seek to dissect some of the biggest political and governance issues in the Republic. I'm Ben Kitili. Good night from Nairobi.